You rejoin us in time for race 2 of the 2022 Estoril round. 2 different winners from the 2 races thus far. Alvaro Bautista dominant yesterday afternoon. Jonathan Rea capitalising on a late mistake from Toprak Razgatlioglu to take the Superpole race this morning. Steve English alongside me. Every chance now that we'll have a 3rd different winner. Yamaha have a great record here. Toprak has been fast all weekend.
Yeah, and Toprak knows that there's unfinished business after this morning. He threw away a race victory in the Superpole race. He'll certainly expect that he's going to be able to do something about that in this afternoon's race. Yesterday he said that it felt like he was almost on a Supersport bike as Bautista came past him out of the last corner. But certainly for Razgatlioglu, he'll know that only small steps are needed for Yamaha to be able to give him that race victory, but it is all about that fight between himself and Jonathan Rea. They cost each other time yesterday, and that allowed Bautista to come back to them.
And of course, we've got the wild card element, the fly in the ointment, with grey clouds looming overhead, and spots of rain have already played a part in the Supersport race that we were building up to just around about an hour ago.
Yeah, and the spots of rain are still there. I just sniffed out the commentary box and it was starting to spit a little bit harder. So as the riders make their way to the grid, that's something that they're going to be keeping an eye on. But certainly there is going to be a need for a lot more rain than what we had during the Supersport race.
Yes, we might hope for some, actually, just to add an extra dynamic. But even if we don't get any rain, we don't need it to get close racing up at the front of the field. Another race decided by less than 2/10 of a second. Jonathan Rea victorious over Toprak Razgatlioglu, trailed him by 0.8 of a second going into the final lap. Toprak almost lost it at the hook, and Jonathan Rea was there to capitalise. Pounces and comes through for the win. Second place then in both the races so far this weekend for Toprak Razgatlioglu, top scorer at this venue in 2020. Had a big haul of points here last year as well, and he needs a big haul of points. He still trails the championship leader Alvaro Bautista by 48, made back 2 on him in the Superpole race this morning.
Yeah, and that's the big thing, is just to try and see if you're able to claw back as many points as possible, because Bautista out in front, 22 points clear of Rea, 48 ahead of Toprak. It means that they do need to pick up big points on them. Obviously the Assen race crash, that's the bulk of the points that Rea has given up.
Yes, for Razgatlioglu, though, he's been giving up points throughout this season, struggled to do better than 3rd position to Bautista and Rea in the early stages of this campaign. This weekend, he and the team made a step forward. We know that this circuit suits them to a greater extent. They've been able to prove it over the last 2 years, as I said, with big points hauls. But now they need to capitalise on it, because there'll be stronger venues for the likes of Rea and Bautista still to come.
Yeah, because the one thing about it is that the opening 2 rounds of the year didn't suit the riding style for Toprak. It didn't suit the Yamaha as much as a circuit like here does, and I think that's one of the big factors. But it's also one of the big worries for Toprak, because he's had the potential to win both races. In all likelihood, probably should have won both races, and instead he's come away with 2 second-place finishes.
Yes, Bautista squeezing through in the run down to the line in race 1, and then that last lap error in the Superpole race this morning for Toprak means that he's come close, but on each occasion on the final lap he has been denied. Jonathan Rea, the rider to capitalise in the Superpole race this morning. The 2 of them have been battling throughout this weekend, particularly down into the braking zone for turn number 1. It's been hair-raising at times.
Yeah, Johnny wasn't impressed by the move from Toprak then in towards turn 1, saying afterwards that felt a little bit on the limit. But certainly, as you can see, it's just the racing that we get between these 2 riders now, and both of them are pretty much as ruthless as the other.
Yes, that's been a consistent theme, hasn't it? But this is the moment for Toprak where it almost all went wrong.
Yeah, and certainly it did go wrong for Toprak. There's no 2 ways about that. He effectively crashes the bike, manages to somehow stand it up. He actually has a big hole in his leathers on the elbow from saving that crash. And he was able to get himself back upright, try and attack back on Rea. You can see he comes really close once again there. Rea cuts across the front of him. But look at that image there. You can see that the bike is down for Toprak. But he's able to maintain that run of not having crashed in a race for a very long time. That's 365 days a year of Supermoto with Kenan Sofuoglu practice, isn't it? Well, the one thing that we see from Toprak all the way through his training is that it's bar-to-bar action between himself, Kenan, Bahatin Sofuoglu, Chan Onchu, Dennis Onchu, and when they go training, they go racing with each other just like that.
Yes, it's great to watch, actually. Perhaps we need to do a Kenan Sofuoglu circuit visit at some point for some of that.
There was one time Toprak was asked about, like, would he be able to bed in a pair of gloves just to be able to get himself ready for the next race weekend in World SBK, and he said, I won't be able to do it whenever I'm training with the guys, because we're not able to bet anything in, you're straight away on the limit.
Serious business against those, of course. Toprak Razgatlioglu then, he's betting in for 2022, but he's hoping that he can move up through the order. He went 8 races without his first victory in 2021 and still came back to win the title. His first win last season was in the 9th race of the season. This is the 9th race of the season this afternoon, so perhaps the auguries are in the favour of Razgatlioglu to pick up the 25 championship points. He certainly needs to do so if he's to bring himself back into realistic contention. Yeah,
for Toprak, he knows that at this stage it is about winning races and trying to close down that gap.
Bad news, unfortunately, from the camp of Luca Mayas. He is a withdrawal, and yet another withdrawal on a weekend of accident and injury. We'd already lost Michael van der Mark in the early stages, right from free practice 1. We lost Philip Ertl in free practice 2. We lost Garrett Gerloff in free practice 3. We're going to catch the tail end of Mayas' incident. And you can see from that impact just why he's unfortunately unfit to take his place in race 2 this afternoon.
Yeah, breaks one of those long bones at the in the centre of your hand, and you can see just how big of an impact it was for him. Also came straight down onto his helmet as well from that crash in turn 1.
Yes, and the bike worse for wear as well. After that spill, it's close in the midfield and everyone's battling for every position. We have a tendency quite inevitably to focus on the top 3, and quite rightly, but there are races right the way through the field. World SBK is highly competitive these days.
Yeah, everyone's got something that they're trying to prove every time they're out there on the racetrack, and certainly what we've seen this year is that the battle for even just getting in the points has been really difficult for a lot of riders. So that 4th to 12th, 13th, 14th position really is hard fought.
Here is Alvaro Bautista, the championship leader, 22 points up on Jonathan Rea. It's a slender advantage over Rea, and if you take out the deficit for Rea in race 2 in Assen, would be Jonathan Rea who would be leading at present. So Bautista hasn't dominated, even if the points totals look particularly strong for him.
Yeah, and certainly in Assen we saw that Bautista in race 2 didn't have to do an awful lot in that race with Razgatlioglu and Rea taken out of it. You can see there the frustration for Toprak as he comes across the line, but the elation for Ducati. They only led 100 metres yesterday, but it was the all-important 100 metres.
Yes, absolutely. 100-metre sprint there that Toprak Razgatlioglu lost out on in the run down to the line. Alvaro Bautista said he knew that was the card that he had left, the only one he had left to try and make his move. He couldn't do it under braking into turn 1 against Toprak, so he had to race him to the line coming off the final turn, and he did it with aplomb for victory in race 1. Best of the rest is Andrea Locatelli in the championship. He currently sits in 4th on points. He's 20 back now from Toprak Razgatlioglu, having lost ground over the course of this weekend. Dropped 7 points to Toprak in race 1 and another 4 in the Superpole race. Realistically, we're looking at a separate fight from 4th position down, and Locatelli is doing well enough in that battle.
Yeah, Locke making a few complaints yesterday about the Yamaha and needing a step forward, and certainly for Locatelli, he knows that he needs to get a little bit closer to that podium fight. As it is, 4th in the World Championship. That's the objective for him this year, because obviously Rea, Razgatlioglu and Bautista, they're expected to be top 3 in the World Championship. But for Locatelli, he's only 20 points drift of his teammates, so he's not had a bad start to the season.
Scott Redding just making his way down at pit lane. It's been a much improved weekend again from Scott Redding, and quotes in the press have been, "This is the real Scott Redding." He's very much back, even if the BMW has its limitations. We're not making any secret about that, but he is that much closer to the front and showing a great deal more fight.
Yeah, went through the tyre yesterday for Scott Redding, so he'll know that he needs to manage that a little bit better in this race and see what he can do. But as it is right now, track temperature's starting to increase again after that light shower that we had during the Superpole in the Supersport race, and then all the rain overnight. We're in and around 27 degrees track temperature, so these are the kind of conditions that can be a little bit wary for Redding on that BMW and then the Kawasaki's for sure.
Yes, if you didn't join us for the Superpole race this morning, it was sorry, if you haven't joined us so far this morning, the warm-up session first thing was soaking. Basically, it had rained heavily overnight, and although it wasn't raining heavily when we arrived at the circuit in the morning, certainly the track conditions were severe enough that it was full wet. As we've gone on during the day, the track has gradually dried up, even if during Supersport we did have a few spots of rain, but they were still only a second away from lap record pace by the end of their race.
Yeah, so the warm conditions now, 18 degrees air temperature, means that any spots of rain will dry pretty quickly. So you do need a pretty significant amount of rain now today to have an impact for the Superbike class.
But significantly cooler nonetheless than the race 1 conditions yesterday.
Yeah, if you look at it over the course of this weekend so far, the hottest track temperatures we've had has been in and around 40 degrees. We're down at 27 now, and air temperature had been about 8-9 degrees hotter than this earlier in the weekend. So the heat wave that hit the Iberian Peninsula, it's certainly gone away.
Tyre dilemma. We know that Jonathan Rea found that to be pivotal in terms of race one. We've all seen the images on social media of Jonathan Rea jokingly asking what's the right decision, SC0 the harder tyre or SCX the red banded softer tyre. In the end the answer to that question was probably SCX.
Well, you can see his teammate there, Alex Lowe's, heading out to the grid. It looks like the X tyre for him with that red dash. And as it is right now, 27 degrees. Kawasaki, they seem to be 29, 30 degrees is that cut-off point. And it was interesting listening to some interviews with Rea on the grid yesterday. He said that I really wanted to be a lot cooler or a lot warmer because it was right in this window yesterday that he went for the wrong tyre. So you'd certainly expect that Rea's going to opt for the X tyre today.
He will be going from pole position once again. We've got an unchanged starting grid on the front row. The result of the Superpole session and the Superpole race. So Saturday morning and Sunday morning, both coming up with identical results. Rea, Razgatlioglu and Bautista. In the Superpole session, it was an outstanding performance from Jonathan Rea and Toprak as well, both to be well clear of Bautista. But come race one on Saturday afternoon, the Ducati man pulled it out of the bag. Could we see another charge from Bautista through the field? For whatever reason, he's an afternoon man. Yeah,
certainly for Bautista, we know that his big strength is managing the wear of that X tyre, the softest compound tyre in all conditions. That's what has been his calling card since he came to World SBK. And certainly with that Ducati, he's a perfect package with that bike, and that's why he's got that 22-point lead in the championship right now. And he's been there or thereabouts every round this year. He's finished on the podium in every race. That consistency was missing in 2019. He has it right now.
Yes, he does. The question is, does he have also the ultimate power to remain in front of the likes of Rea and Razgatlioglu? The level of the riding at the moment is quite outstanding.
Yeah, what we've seen from Rea and Razgatlioglu is two riders at the absolute top of their game, and that's what Bautista's up against.
Jonathan Rea will start from pole position as he meets up once again with Jorge Viegas, the FIM president, and of course a Portuguese native as well. Jonathan Rea, pole position there, makes his 350th Superbike start. That will put him second in the all-time records and clear of Tom Sykes. He finished third position in race one, just didn't have the pace to stick with them over the first feature-length distance of the weekend.
Yeah, and we saw in that race that he opted for the wrong tyre. That was probably what made the big difference for him, but certainly for Rea, he'll be trying to be a lot stronger in the second half of today's race.
2 second places thus far this weekend for Toprak, Razgatlioglu, and both of them could well have been wins on the final lap. In the run down to the line, Toprak missed out at the end of race one, having traded the majority of the lap leads with Jonathan Rea, and then earlier on today a near miss at turn 9, and again lost out on the race victory on the final lap. This is Alvaro Bautista, who completes the front row of the grid, came through from third to win in race one. Third position in the Superpole race though. Needs to get off to a better start here, because in race one he ended up 2.5 seconds behind, battling with the likes of Locatelli further back.
Yeah, he got boxed out into turn 1 yesterday, and that's what really put him on the back foot. He ended up having to make up a 2.5 second gap to the race leaders, but he was able to bridge that and then claim the race victory.
Second row of the grid will feature Iker Lecuona, Andrea Locatelli and Alex Lowe's. And Lecuona, certainly one of the stars of this 2022 campaign thus far. Well, there's no doubt about who the main championship contenders are. Bautista, Rea and Razgatlioglu, with then a 20-point championship gap behind them to best of the rest, who is Andrea Locatelli. He's up ahead of Iker Lecuona and Michael Ruben Rinaldi, with not too much of a margin separating them. And here are the two big men of the weekend, and Jonathan Rea just receiving another watch. That's going to be for his latest success in the Tissot Superpole race, as he signs the camera in customary fashion. He's used to picking up those race wins over the 10-lap distance, is Jonathan Rea. So on with the grid, and Andrea Locatelli for 5th position here. And it was 4th position in race one, a 5th position in the Superpole race. He's been remarkably consistent.
Yeah, Locatelli, since stepping up to a Superbike, has done a really good job. And certainly you'd have to say that now this year he's really established himself as one of those front-running riders. Just needs that first race victory, and that's what the goal is for him for this season.
Getting the golden angles here of all of the riders on their grids as we continue on with our second row. Ika Lekuona will start from P4. But this on the outside of the second row is Alex Lowe's. A 7th position finish for him in race 1. 6th in the Superpole race. Gained 2 positions late on. And that is critical because not only did it give him a couple of extra championship points, it also puts him on the second row of the grid. Gradually improving is Alex Lowe's, having been on the back foot since the start of the weekend. I think we can hear from him now.
Alex Lowe, slightly tricky weekend for you so far, but a better showing in the Superpole race earlier.
Yeah, it's a little bit peculiar track here. We have a base in from this year. It hasn't quite worked, so we've been chasing the setup a little bit, but solid weekend so far. We're going to make a small change for this race, try a different tyre combination, especially with the rear, which we didn't use yesterday, and see if it allows us to be a bit faster at the start.
Thanks, good luck, Alex.
So Alex Lowe is making the changes to try and make an improvement. Friday afternoon was where he lost a lot of ground, really, making up for lost time somewhat since then. Third row of the grid, Scott Redding, Michael Ruben Rinaldi and Xavi Forés. Redding with an 8th position finish in race 1. Perhaps even more impressive in the Superpole race earlier on today for 7th, and that comes on the back of a 5th place from race 2 in Assen. So Redding really has turned things around after what was a disastrous start this 2022 campaign with just a single championship point that he managed to score first time out in Aragon. No such problems for the top Honda man, Ika Lekuona, 5th in the championship point standings, and for Lekuona, 6th place finish for him in race 1, 4th place in the Superpole race this morning. A bit of a gap in the end as he lost out to Alvaro Bautista. Continue on with the third row. We've already seen Scott Redding, who lines up P7. This is Michael Ruben Rinaldi, who's in 8th. It's been a very disappointing weekend, to be perfectly honest, for Rinaldi. Struggled just to get up into the top 9 at all in the Superpole race earlier on today. So he could do with finishing on a high here.
Yeah, really tough weekend for Rinaldi up to this point, and obviously the decision to use the 0 tyre, the harder tyre yesterday, backfired for him. He was also opting for an intermediate front in the Superpole race, so he's bucked the trend in both races so far.
Jonathan Ray, your best lap leader at the moment. He set the fastest lap of the race in race 1 and set a new lap record in the process. We have had lap records falling left, right and centre in 2022, such as the pace at the front of the field.
Yeah, the pace at the front of the field is hot as it's ever been, and that really is what's pushing everyone right at the front. That's what makes the consistency of Ray and Razgadioglu this season and last year, and then obviously Scott Redding and now Alvaro Bautista at the front.
Xavi Forés, great riding from him so far this weekend. Well missed in the Superbike World Championship. The 36-year-old Spanish veteran, a former regular, spent 3 years with the Barney squad, of course, and came up with a series of podiums. I think 5 podiums with Barney, 6 in total in the Superbike World Championship for Xavi Forés. But to get himself up onto the third row of the grid has done well. 11th and 9th, his 2 race results thus far. Fourth row of the grid, 3 riders who all fell in race number 2, in Superpole race rather, this morning. No, I don't have a crystal ball. Eugene Laverty, 15th in race 1. He went down this morning. Xavi Vierge, 5th place for him in race 1. He too retired from this morning's action. And then Loris Baz, who lines up in 12th. So all of these riders, of course, benefiting from their grid slots that they earned in the Superpole session. The best of the performers that didn't make the top 9 this morning.
Yeah, and certainly for Xavi Forés, he was the only rider that made his way into those leading positions, and that's why we end up with Laverty, Vierge and Baz on the front row of the grid. You can see here a little bit of activity for Kawasaki. That's going to be on Jonathan Ray's bike as well, with potentially a change of tyre there for Ray on the grid. We did hear from Alex Lowe that he was going with a different tyre today compared to yesterday. That'll be a change to the X compound tyre for Lowe's, which would be the softer tyre. And you would imagine that Ray is going to be the same. This could be a little bit of gamesmanship from Kawasaki as much as anything else.
Well, the big heavy tyres, so hard work to get them onto the grid. I hope he does make a change now, having made the tyre engineers run out up to the start line. Completing the fourth row now, Loris Baz, as we said, 10th place finish for him in race 1. Not been the best of weekends for him. He's scored higher in Aragon, and particularly race 1 in Assen, where he looked good value.
Yeah, and for Baz, it was a big crash this morning as well for him through that last corner, but hopefully he's able to bounce back from it and have a good result today as well, because that Bonovo team have done a good job this weekend with Laverty and Baz as well. They've been pretty closely matched to the factory bike of Scott Redding.
Yes, Redding, who will line up from 7th on the grid, Laverty in 10th and Loris Baz in 12th. 5th row of the grid then for Kota Nazane, Axel Bassani and Luca Bernardi. Nazane with a couple of points in race 1, and what a relief that will have been for him after failing to score in the opening 2 rounds. Competitive enough with 11th in the Superpole race, just 2 positions behind making it onto the 3rd row, so he will start in P13. 14th on the grid for Axel Bassani. He was 12th in race 1, 10th position, and just 1 place outside of qualifying onto the 3rd row of the grid earlier on today for Axel Bassani.
Yeah, Bassani we saw in the Superpole race. He was a rider that opted for intermediate tyres front and rear. The gamble didn't work out for him, and that's why he ends up in the 5th row of the grid.
Yes, completing that 5th row will be Luca Bernardi on the number 29, the Barney Ducati. He was 13th for 3 points in race 1, 15th earlier on today, so not quite being able to replicate the form from race 1. He scratched around for 9 championship points, scored in race 1 in Aragon, race 2 in Assen, and then here in the feature-length race yesterday afternoon. The 6th row of the grid features Marvin Fritz, Christophe Pensant and Tati Mercado. This is Fritz, who had a fair off himself in the Superpole race earlier on here today, so looking for his first points coming in at late notice, of course, this weekend.
Yeah, Fritz has done a solid job this weekend. Obviously for him, he expects to have some World SBK outings this season for Yarsh. That'll be later in the season, probably Catalunya and Most, and then we'll be able to see him there for his full team in the Endurance World Championship. And he did a good job when he jumped on that bike last year as well, but this weekend's been a very different fight for him, and certainly for Marvin, he'll be expecting to just keep himself in those points paying positions, see what he's able to do.
Yes, alongside Marvin Fritz on that 6th row will be Christophe Pensant and Tati Mercado. This the number 23 of Christophe Pensant. He was 18th in race number 1 and 12th outside of the points in both of the races thus far. Mercado completing that 6th row of the grid, and then row 7, Hafiz Shireen, Isaac Viñales and Oliver Koenig. We've already heard from our pit reporter Dave Goddard with Alex Lowes on the grid, and I think we can go back down to him now.
Yes, we've got Honda team manager Leon Camia with us. Leon, some good results yesterday, but a spill for Xavi Vieira this morning.
Yeah, slightly unlucky to be honest. He made a really good start. He chose slick front and rear, which I think was the best option at the end, but yeah, he was in traffic, and yeah, you know, it's hard to see a lot of places. There was only one very small line, and he made a little slight mistake, a little bit too aggressive on a wet patch and went down. But I think honestly it's really easy to make in them conditions, so yeah, unfortunate, but also Ika made a very good job. He went with an intermediate front, and yeah, did an amazing job. I didn't expect them lap times from him, especially towards the end of the race when it was obviously hot conditions for that front tyre. But yeah, both are doing good. Both are capable of some good results in this second race. So we'll see how we go.
Great stuff. Thanks, Leon.
Thank you.
Leon Camia then with his thoughts ahead of race 2, and Honda certainly feeling that they're a little bit closer to the sharp end. The problem is the top 3 manufacturers and their official teams looking so strong at the moment. Difficult to try and bridge those kind of gaps.
Yeah, it really is, and certainly what you see at the moment with the top 3 manufacturers are bikes that work well week in, week out, every track we go to, and we've had 3 very different tracks up to this point of the year, but it's very encouraging for Camia and for Honda to see that they've been able to be a lot stronger this year compared to previous years.
Yes, as we continue on through the last couple of riders through the field, mentioned already Isaac Viñales and Oliver Koenig. As far as the riders at the head of the field, Ray, Razgatlioglu and Bautista, well, each of them have got a case to make that they are a potential winner here, and you wouldn't like to put your money on anyone in any given race in World SBK these days.
No, I think that the only thing that you're going to take for granted is that we're going to have a big scrap at the front.
Yes, as we complete our 21 rider field, of course, an abridged lineup. As I mentioned previously, we lost the services of Luca Mayas after his spill, heavy spill as well, earlier on today. We were already 3 riders down after race 1 with problems. After the 3 free practice sessions with problems for Michael Vandermark in FP1, Philip Ertl in FP2, and then Garrett Gerloff in FP3. A great loss in the case of Gerloff in particular, because of his great results around here in the past and his excellent performances on Friday morning. So that brings us to the end of our grid presentation. We pan across our top three. Alvaro Bautista, the race 1 winner, looking to make it 2 feature-length wins this weekend. Toprak Razgatlioglu, 2 second places, has gone 8 races in the defence of his title without a first victory. And Jonathan Rea, this morning's winner, making his 350th World Superbike start to go second in the all-time rankings.